On this Saturday night, two sworn enemies, one step closer to an all-out war. Israel deploys 100 fighter jets hitting strategic targets in Iran.
We have both the capability and the resolve to act decisively.
Increasing worries in the region as Tehran says it's obligated to respond. Transgender rights on the line.
Politics are affecting everyone all the time.
Saskatchewan's controversial parental rights policy ahead of its provincial election. Plus, vital treatment. How a newly approved drug could be a game changer in the battle against brain cancer.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The two most powerful armies in the Middle East and arguably the region's biggest enemies are on high alert tonight. This after Israel launched retaliatory airstrikes against Iran early this morning. Israel strategically targeted missile manufacturing sites in Iran, killing 4 military officers. Here is what we know so far. Israeli officials say they deployed over 100 aircraft, including F-35 stealth fighter jets, which flew roughly 2,000 kilometers to Iran. They struck military sites in Tehran province as well as 2 other provinces in the southwest that Israel says Iran used to manufacture the weapons it fired at Israel earlier this month. Israel says it strategically avoided nuclear sites and oil production facilities. Civic infrastructure in Iran was also spared. We'll get to the significance of those decisions in a moment, but first, Reggie Cecchini brings us up to date on the latest developments.
Each of these flashes in the sky over Tehran is the result of a painstaking decision by the Israeli government. A warning to the Iranian regime that a line has been crossed again.
All those who threaten the state of Israel and seek to drag the region into wider escalation will pay a heavy price.
But it does really open up a Pandora's box.
This was an anticipated response after nearly 200 ballistic missiles were launched towards Israel a month ago, in a tit-for-tat following Israeli strikes that killed militant leaders in and out of Iran. Israel's prime minister says targets were chosen in advance according to its national security, hitting military manufacturing facilities, deflating Iran's ability to build up its hardware. And with damage limited, Iran can spin the situation.
There are walls around all these bases. The people cannot see the damage. They can lie, they can say, oh, nothing happened.
My hope is this is the end.
The U.S. has been working tirelessly to bring peace to the region, with its top diplomat ending his 11th round of shuttle diplomacy on Friday.
Tony Blinken was there for several days this week. This war must end.
While the U.S. has been offering counsel to its ally as it sought revenge, including calls to avoid striking energy and nuclear sites, Israel argues its actions were of its own choices, leaving a global audience to sit with bated breath.
We need to avoid further regional escalation and urge all sides to show restraint.
I think the expectation in Tel Aviv is that Iran would be too fearful to respond to the attack and that Israel has achieved its objective.
Following the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack, Israel has vowed to take all steps necessary to protect itself, resulting in a flurry of fighting in territories where Iran holds great influence. Iran claims it has a right to respond, but it could be a potentially dangerous move.
The whole region can go down a very, very fiery path because the United States will be embroiled in that kind of escalation.
Now, it's unclear if Iran will carry out an immediate counterstrike, though its military has suggested that a ceasefire in both Gaza and Lebanon could stand in place. Actions that would also satisfy the West, with negotiations set to resume in the coming days. Carolyn?
Reggie Cecchini in Washington, thank you. Mercedes Stevenson has been speaking with her national security sources about the significance of these strikes. Mercedes, what are you hearing?
Carolyn, my sources say that these were strategic hits on very specific military targets. They say that the Israelis avoided hitting Iranian civilian infrastructure, nuclear weapons development sites, or oil fields, all of which would have been known to force a strong Iranian response. And Israel has still managed to significantly degrade Iran's abilities to both attack and defend itself. My sources who are in multiple allied countries say Iran is acutely aware of Israel's military superiority and potential willingness to fight. And the last thing that the Iranian regime wants is to look weak, which means they face a difficult decision. Do nothing in response to the strikes and risk looking weak to their own population, where there is already strong anti-regime sentiment, as well as potentially looking weak to friends and enemies, or retaliate and risk a major escalation with the Israelis that could expose Iranian military limitations, and that could cost them dearly. 3 sources tell me this may be the moment for discussions and diplomacy, and the fact that Iran has not yet pledged revenge and is downplaying the attack is significant. This could be an off-ramp moment, and the U.S. would certainly welcome that on the eve of an election as they warily watch the Middle East. Notable, though, in all this discussion is someone missing: Canada. The Prime Minister and Foreign Minister have both been silent on the strikes after a full day has passed, something being noticed by some of our allies. Carolyn?
Mercedes Stevenson in Ottawa, thank you. On the heels of Israel's strikes on Iran, there was more exchange of rocket fire between Israel and Hezbollah. Hezbollah launched a barrage of more than 80 projectiles from Lebanon into northern Israel. The Iran-backed militant group also called for the immediate evacuation of at least 25 Israeli settlements near the border, deeming them legitimate military targets. And today, Israel Defense Forces released video it says shows strikes on an underground Hezbollah compound in Lebanon. Meanwhile, nowhere is safe in Gaza. In the last 24 hours, Israeli strikes have pummeled parts of the south, central Gaza, and there have been raids in the north. The Hamas-run health ministry says at least 38 people died in Khan Yunis, including 9 children from a single family. Israel says air and ground strikes targeted Hamas fighters and dismantled military infrastructure. And today, the UN's top humanitarian official warned that the entire population of northern Gaza is at risk of dying. Joyce Masuya says hospitals have been hit, health workers detained, shelters burned down, and first responders prevented from rescuing people, and that men and boys are being taken away by the truckload. And now to the U.S. presidential race, where there's only 10 days left until the election. Today, Republican candidate Donald Trump was campaigning in the crucial battleground state of Michigan.
Kamala Harris, you're fired. Get the hell out of here. Get out of here. You're fired.
Trump once again trying to rouse his followers against his Democratic rival, Kamala Harris. At another rally in Michigan last night, Trump ran incredibly late, leaving his supporters waiting in the cold for nearly 3 hours. He apparently was held up recording a podcast with Joe Rogan in Texas.
Please give a big, loud Texas welcome to the next president of the United States.
Well, also in Texas last night, Democratic candidate Kamala Harris was getting her own superstar welcome in Houston, campaigning with Beyoncé. With abortion rights and women's reproductive rights in focus at the event, the singer is rallying behind the current vice president, saying she is what the country needs right now. And on this side of the border, final counts are underway in several BC ridings after last weekend's razor-thin provincial election. Early results show the NDP is expanding its lead in 2 key ridings. It's also closing in on the Conservatives in a 3rd riding that would give David Eby another majority government. Final results are expected tomorrow or Monday. The issue of transgender rights has emerged as a surprise issue in the Saskatchewan election. The topic has become a flashpoint in culture war politics over the last few years, but there was no talk of a new policy related to parental or transgender rights until relatively late in the campaign. Heather Yourex-West looks at why.
Politics are affecting everyone all the time.
Blake Tate voted early in the Saskatchewan election. As a member of the transgender community, he says there's a lot on the line.
This is the most motivated I've seen the people around my age ever in elections in the time that I've been able to vote.
Recognize the Premier.
In February, Saskatchewan legislated a parental rights policy to prevent transgender children from changing their names or pronouns at school without their parents' consent. following the implementation of a similar policy in New Brunswick and dozens of bills related to gender politics and parental rights across the United States.
People on the social conservative right, I think, were looking for an issue to mobilize around, and this offered them an issue.
Making sure that kids are
But in Canada, the policies have been politically polarizing. Proposed transgender policies in Alberta have been popular. In New Brunswick, backlash may have contributed to Blaine Higgs's defeat.
Well, there had been no mention of new policies related to transgender or parental rights leading up to this election. That all changed late in the campaign, when the Saskatchewan party leader announced that rules related to change rooms would be a new government's priority number one.
When it comes to change rooms, I would say this. The first order of business with the re-elected Saskatchewan party government would ensure that biological males are not changing in a biological female or alongside biological females.
To me, that suggests the Sask party that is scared of losing their right-wing kind of base of support, perhaps to a party on the right, like the Sask United Party.
Scott Moe has voiced concern about potential vote splitting on the right, opening the door to the Saskatchewan NDP.
These are kids. They don't have a voice to advocate for themselves in this. They are not being properly represented.
It's with those kids in mind that Tate cast his ballot. Hopeful others in his province will do the same. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Saskatoon.
To Nova Scotia now, where there's speculation that Progressive Conservative leader Tim Houston could call an early election any day now. Heidi Petracek explains how healthcare concerns in that province could be central to the outcome.
The dirt, the chaos.
When Heather Spidell took her husband to a Halifax emergency room last week for a heart issue, it turned into a 13-hour wait in conditions she says shocked them.
Paint peeling off the walls, holes in the walls, gyprock exposed and hanging off doorways, an ancient-looking stretcher.
Some of it due to a hospital expansion project, but for her it was a stark contrast to time spent in an emergency department in Scotland on vacation the week before. The wait to see a doctor there, 30 minutes, lunch provided. So when they recently got this from the Nova Scotia government in the mail, it was tough to swallow.
There are probably better uses for this kind of money.
The pamphlet, the latest sign an early election could be on the horizon.
I think we have to start telling the truth about what's going on in this province with healthcare.
The province has expanded virtual care and gave pharmacists more power to diagnose and prescribe. ER wait times, though, are slightly worse this past year than the last. And while more than 11,000 people found a family physician last month, 145,000 are still without. In 2021, Progressive Conservative Premier Tim Houston ran on a promise to fix health care.
And he is hoping that Nova Scotians will be good enough with what he considers to be good enough.
The issue was key in the Liberal rise to power in New Brunswick. And it's now front and center in campaigning in Saskatchewan. While in Ontario, a new task force struck to deal with the doctor shortage there has also sparked talk of an early election. Urbaniak says Houston may be hoping other issues could eclipse healthcare concerns in his favor.
Affordability, housing, concerns about federal policy.
Healthcare should not be managed by politicians.
Spidell wishes Canadians could just get the care they need when they need it, without having to wait for campaign promises. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
In Eastern Europe, polls have closed in Georgia's parliamentary elections. Now there's contention over who's come out on top. Longtime ruling party Georgia Dream claimed victory after exit polls by pro-government media projected them winning comfortably. However, rival exit polls suggest pro-Western opposition parties could clinch a majority, which prompted them to claim victory as well.
The people afraid that he may bring Georgia back to the Russian sphere of influence, which is the kind of case, especially if he wins with constitutional majority. There's a fear that he may change the constitutional clause, which now says that Georgia should become part of the Euro-Atlantic community. And if he will remove it, then we don't know where Georgia is moving.
Georgia was on the verge of joining the European Union, but Brussels put its bid on hold earlier this year after the country introduced controversial laws cracking down on free speech. As winter fast approaches, Russia's war in Ukraine appears frozen in place. Russian missiles hit Ukraine's capital and surrounding areas overnight, killing at least 2 people. 4 others, including a child, were killed in a missile attack that hit residences and a medical facility in the city of Dnipro. There's new hope for Canadian patients with brain cancer. Coming up, the new drug approved by Health Canada and how it's offering some patients more time. In Mexico, at least 19 people have been killed and 6 others injured in a bus crash. The bus rolled over an embankment and landed on its roof after colliding with a trailer that had detached from a transport truck. The bus was en route from the city of Tepic to Ciudad Juarez. Prosecutors are considering charges against the driver of the tractor trailer that lost its load. Health Canada has just approved a new drug which has been shown to slow the growth of some types of brain tumors. It comes in a pill and it's not a cure, but as Catherine Ward explains, it can offer something that's invaluable: more time.
I blacked out and I wasn't able to speak. And I was apparently, according to my crew, I was giggling and laughing. So absolutely not normal characteristics.
That was the moment in 2020 where Stephen Stefanidis knew something was wrong when he suffered a partial seizure. He was on the job working as a firefighter in Toronto in December. His diagnosis was a devastating blow, a grade 2 IDH mutant glioma, which is considered an incurable form of brain cancer.
At first, I was in shock and I still wasn't digesting the information because it's literally a heavy amount of information to digest.
1 week later, Stefanidis had surgery, but it wasn't a total cure.
Our best treatments, which up until now have consisted of radiation and chemotherapy, only delays the time until which the tumor grows back.
At the time, Stefanidis qualified for a large-scale clinical trial looking at a new treatment, a pill to help slow tumor regrowth. The results from that trial, which concluded in 2022, are exciting for Dr. Mary Jane Lim-Fat, especially with the drug commercially now called Veranigo getting Health Canada's approval this week.
The time until which the tumor grew was more than double the time that what was seen in the group that did not receive the drug. So, it was 27.7 months on average.
Stefanidis was originally in the placebo group, but switched over to the actual drug after the trial was unblinded. Now he's back to work and takes his medication every morning, hoping to keep his cancer at bay as long as possible.
The benefit far outweighs the price to pay. And that's why it's good to hear that it's becoming approved and it can reach out and help many other patients that are going through similar things that I have.
Patients from the trial continue to be monitored to see how the results fare long term. Doctors say they hope the drug will be widely covered so more people can benefit. Carolyn?
Catherine Ward in Toronto, thank you. In a time of dwindling employee productivity, could AI be the answer? Ahead, the new tool being used at one of Canada's largest companies. One of the largest telecom companies in Canada is trying to harness the power of AI to increase employee productivity. Tellis says some of its workers are now using an AI assistant to answer their questions and make their work easier. Nivrita Ganguly reports on what this could mean for other companies looking to save time and money.
Over the past 2 months, employees at Tellis have been carrying a new personal assistant around in their pockets. It solves IT issues, summarizes reports, interrogates legal documents, and even writes code.
To be honest, we are truly blown away. It's already resolved 124,000 inquiries and requests for help, and it's saved on average 17 minutes from each team member.
Powering this tech is Google's Gemini, a large language model that competes with the likes of OpenAI's GPT, Anthropic's Claude, and Meta's Llama to make generative AI tools.
These tools are trained on vast amounts of information, giving them the ability to generate new content. Think ChatGPT. It can help you with your homework, and it can help businesses save billions.
This technology can boost productivity over time in Canada by over $230 billion. Giving back 175 hours to an average Canadian every year in time savings to free up high-value activities that particular Canadian needs to get done.
That's good news for a country struggling with a sharp decline in productivity. StatsCan data shows about 7% of Canadian businesses used AI in 2023. The lion's share of that was generative AI. But it's over the next 12 months that AI use is really expected to jump to 20% of businesses that employ more than 100 people. But if you hear this and you're worried about the risks of AI, you're not alone. Concerns around privacy, reliability, and job security have many businesses staying away. Early adopters like Tellis say those risks can be mitigated.
It's no different than driving a car. A car can be very dangerous, right? And you can drive it wrong and you can get in accidents and everything. But if you drive it responsibly, you're fine.
Anytime you have a big technology shift, you're going to see some disruption. This will be no different. I've been in this industry for quite a long time, and I've not seen a technology shift like this since maybe the shift from PC to mobile.
Nivrita Ganguly, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. Tonight's Your Canada is the peak of Alouette Mountain in Maple Ridge, British Columbia. We love seeing your Canada. Please keep emailing your photos to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.